talking for the School of Comics in Florence. The director is Alessio Duva, and we have put together this with Lucca Comics. We're putting together this little virtual interview with a man that I have known for a very long time, and I admire, and he's been everything. He's been a teacher and a great friend to me, Mr. Dan Haskett, who is, just brilliant. Character design, animation, storyboarding, you've done it all. Welcome, Dan. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me, Frank.
Yeah, you're welcome. I see that. I see that behind you. There's a piece of equipment that looks like it was plucked out of the 1930s, man. That animation.
Yes, this is. I'm one of the last people who's still working on paper, and so I have my good old animation disc right here, and I don't know if you can. Let's see if I can pull it back here. I'm even using exposure sheets still.
What?
So.
Holy cow!
Yeah.
I had to actually describe everything you just pointed to my students.
I'll bet. Now they can see it for themselves, eh?
Yeah, like what is that?
Well, shall I explain it, or?
Yeah, please. In your
okay. All right. Well, since I'm still working on paper, the paper has to be registered to make sure that all the drawings are in the proper place. And so we have peg bars here and here. And once upon a time, the characters would go on one and the background would go on the other. And put on my little switch here.
Lo and behold.
It lights up so that you can see through all the drawings that you're making, so that you can make sure that the action is going in the proper direction, so you can see where you left off and where you're going. So that's what this lights is for.
And the exposure sheet, which is probably like one of the exposure sheets being one of the most complicated things in the world, right?
Well, it sounds not complicated if you're new to it, but all it is just a chart that shows you that each one of these. I don't know if you can see the lines here, but each space on this chart is for one frame of film when we still used film, and so it's just to mark where the drawings go and how long they're going to be shot for, how many frames of film they're going to be shot for. And there's also a column here for action and a column for dialogue, because the soundtrack has to be broken down into frames so that you can animate to it. Yeah. So that's all this is. It's just a record of everything, so it can be shot properly.
And like the old story goes, I should say right now, yeah, but how do you make it move, right?
Well, I think we'll get into that as we go on.
Yeah. So I'm gonna start with the first question. Like, when did you know that this was the world for you, the world of animation?
Oh, I knew very, very early. I had been drawing since I was 3 years old, and I knew I wanted to be a cartoonist. So, whatever it was going to be, magazines, newspapers, advertising, I knew I wanted to be a cartoonist. Animation really hit me as a career when I was about 12. And so, yeah, I always say, it found me. I didn't go after it.
And what was it? What did find you? How did you come across that?
Just in watching so much of it on TV. I mean, we growing up in the 50s and 60s, TV ran everything that had been made up to that point. So I got to see everything from the old Paul Terry Silence, and Felix the Cat and that kind of stuff, to what was being made at the present time. So I got to see the whole history of American animation.
Yeah.
7 days a week, actually. And
Yeah.
I don't know what it was that hit me. I think it was just the idea that you could make a world out of drawings. I think that I just found really fascinating. So I wanted to find out more. Yeah.
All right. So Dan, I was asking you the question: was there a particular cartoon that had ignited that spark in you?
Oh my goodness. No, not a particular one. I mean, I think I was just fascinated by all of it. And at that time, what was popular, I mean, of course, besides Disney, uh, the Max Fleischer cartoons and the Warner Brothers cartoons, and oh my goodness, I don't think, UPA cartoons, the modern art cartoons, I think were still running in theaters then, but they would soon be on TV as well. But no, I liked all of it. I liked the whole spectrum.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah,
Wow.
and
Wow.
yeah, I mean, I found something to learn, of course, from the whole spectrum.
So you went to the High School of Art and Design, which happens to be my high school, our high school, I would say.
Right.
And I remember when you walked into that room, you and Louis Scarborough,
Yes.
and you basically like changed my life. You know, like you walked in there and you showed a Superman Mike Fleischer cartoon. And our eyes were like this, like our eyes opened up. Like, what the hell is this? And most importantly, for a guy like me, right? For us in school in New York, 3,000 miles away from California, to see you and Louis walk into that room gave us hope that said, you know, we could make it too, right?
Mm.
And that was really important to us. You know, that I think is where education comes into play. But
I'm so glad. I'm so glad to hear that.
so
Thank you.
was,
Thank you for letting me know.
Thank you. And you know, so you go to High School of Art and Design, which is known for its tremendous animation program, right? Because I only had animation in the last semester of that school.
Yeah. Yeah, it was so funny. I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No. So where do you go from there? Where did you go to continue your education in animation?
Oh, well, I'm glad you brought that up because interestingly, art and design, even though it really wasn't heavily into teaching animation, at least they had all the equipment.
Yeah.
But when I left, though at that time, things were only just beginning. Film studies were only just beginning, at least on the East Coast. And I went to Pratt Institute, and everybody was in a tizzy because they had no idea what to do. And so animation was kind of non-existent at that time. So I went to work. In fact, as soon as I left art and design, I got my first job. And that's how I started learning the business. You know, very different from the way things are now. It's almost like the reverse today.
And what was your first job in animation, Dan?
It was in commercials. In New York at that time, that's what animation was basically, was commercials and industrial films, educational films, things like that. In fact, the year I started was the year that Sesame Street began. And so that kept a lot of animators busy in New York. And 2 years after I started college, I worked on my first Sesame Street. Not my first, but I was an inker and a painter on a Sesame Street segment.
Nice. You know, it's funny that you mentioned that because when I was teaching animation this week, I showed to my students one of your Sesame Street spots, the cat's head.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
And we were looking at that because, you know, and we could talk about this briefly about, you know, the 12 principles of animation, right? Like we were teaching that.
Right.
And I find that one of the hardest principles for them to understand is staging.
Oh, really?
And I was showing them how beautifully staged you had created this cartoon, and how everything was like, there's a moment where the cat meows and it turns his head so you could see this wonderful expression, right? And then it comes right back to the profile. And I was using that as an example of, look at how Dan staged this so that everything reads. So that Sesame Street spot's been following you all your life, man.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, it's staging is something that it does seem to be a bit of a sticking point. But all it is just making sure that everything is presented as directly as possible, so that the audience always knows what's going on and where to look. Yeah. And that's really all it is keeping the audience in mind when you're conceiving the movie, when you're storyboarding it, when you're animating it, just making sure that you're connecting with the audience.
Yeah.
That's
it's difficult. It's easy to explain. It's difficult for younger people to get because they're used to a certain staging that is based on, I don't know, like live action or something. They stage things very straight. And because they don't understand Charlie Chaplin or Buster Keaton or how they would stage something, their staging is based on almost like verbal cues, like everything's like. So when it comes to them to animate a figure, they, and I say stage it correctly, that's when they start to have problems with. So.
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, all of us. I think you and I included. We saw a lot of talky cartoons.
Yeah,
and so yeah, I mean, I don't know if they're talkier than ever before, but but I get what you're saying.
Yeah,
and so if the students have to stage something that is silent, then they'll start really thinking in terms of, oh, okay, I don't have any other way of communicating except this one way. So, all right, I have to start, imagining how things are going to, how the characters are going to behave rather than just talk.
Right, right. And so, this brings me a little bit to education being, there's so many schools now that teach animation, right? This is the hot thing. Like everybody's teaching this stuff. Like, what do you think the role of a school is? Like, how does it fit? How do we teach animation to the younger generation?
Well, at Art and Design, Frank, we used to have a class. I don't know if you remember this one. But there was a class called Advertising Production Workshop.
Yeah.
And that was, as its name implies, that was a class that was set up exactly like a real studio.
Yeah.
And I don't know if too many colleges are doing that when they teach animation. I think some are. but I don't know how common it is for to have that kind of a setup. Because see, today, a lot of, at least in the States, a lot of people are not learning from the on the job type of thing. You know, they're learning what they do learn, they learn in college, and then they come in and they take their first job, and they don't have the opportunity to learn from someone older. You know, that was the fun when I was coming up. That was one of the fun things about working in the studios, was that you met all these wonderful people,
Yeah.
who could tell you all of their war stories, you know. And yeah.
And with you, it was Eric Larson, right? In your
Yes.
case, yeah.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you had the privilege to working with one of the 9 old men, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. In fact, Eric at that time was sort of like the school teacher, because Disney had to get a lot of newcomers up to speed very quickly. At that time, they were trying to actually keep animation alive, believe it or not. Things were kind of, very difficult at that time. Walt had been gone. He had died a decade earlier, and no one was sure how the studio was going to proceed. So all of a sudden, they had to set up a training program to make sure that they had new blood to keep the place alive.
Now, hold on for a minute. Didn't they have Cal Arts to do that for them?
No, not yet. To do that for them, excuse me. Yes, they did. Cal Arts, in fact, I'm sorry. I forgot. Cal Arts was going at that time, but it was not, I guess you can say it wasn't really as up to speed either. It was, yeah. So it was necessary to have the training program in the studio.
And now and I'm sorry, what was Eric's process of teaching you, to teaching the young generation? Did he like give you assignments, or did he, how did that go?
It was pretty organic, really, because the way they had set things up was all the trainees had to do 2 pencil test films that I guess were, like a couple of minutes a piece. And Eric would guide you, once you handed in your storyboard and, show them what you wanted to do, Eric would guide you as you were animating the thing. So you would, you'd regularly bring in what you were working on and show him, and explain what you were going for with it. And he would help you out that way. He would, sometimes he'd put your drawings on his disc here, and go over them with you and explain what he was doing and why.
That's nice.
So it was a fairly organic thing, and it was sort of like it was a learning on the job atmosphere.
Right. Well, that's a privilege, because I have to tell you, a lot of kids don't know who the 9 old men are, which
is scary. Yeah.
Scary. It's scary because these guys were creating the principles that are guiding like Marvel films now. When you see Spider-Man and Iron Man and all that,
Right.
So they can appreciate all that has come from it, but they don't know the guys who created it. And that bothers me, because I think part of education is, okay, now we have to go back in time and show you who these guys are and what they meant.
Yeah. But that's not a bad thing to have to do. I'm sorry that a lot of kids don't know them now, but fortunately, there's certainly enough material on them online,
Yeah.
and in books, so that you catch up. But I know it is very sad that
yeah, it's difficult, and it's speaking of online stuff, like there is a wellspring of information now on YouTube that I would have cut both my legs off to have back in the day. Well, okay, one leg. And I'm amazed that, sadly enough, that all that mountain of information is not seen because there's so much that a young person might say, well, I'm just going to look at what I like, but not what I need. And it's,
Yeah, but you know what's funny? I'm glad you brought that up, because when I was little, you had Disney on the one hand and Hanna-Barbera on the other, who were doing two completely different approaches to animation, and I found that as a kid, I liked them both, but I realized too that in seeing the older stuff, the Disney stuff, then Disney, Fleischer, so on, that there was something I really loved about that too, because it's like the characters came completely to life,
right.
And that really grabbed me, and I could appreciate what they were doing at Hanna-Barbera, in that the humor was basically verbal.
Right.
But at the same time, there was this other stuff that's like, oh, wow, that you can actually get people, you can actually have characters that people can relate to. They can, actually, they seem like they're living and breathing, they're thinking on their own power and moving on their own power. And so I found that fascinating. And I think that the more that students today see, the better off they'll be. Because I understand, because I run into young people who are not really versed in what came before, in cartooning in general, as well as in animation. And so they're not aware of how many styles there are to enjoy, and to work in.
Right.
And to develop. There's so many styles that have never ever been animated.
Yeah. Well, I show them the UPA stuff only, because it's such a wonderful way of animating something on a budget, and they have solved all these problems that are still innovative, in my opinion, because you're looking at that stuff and you're going, "Wow, I haven't seen that." These are 6 years old, So I try to give them everything, the big budget, the little budget, the no budget, so they could see, what's your wallet like, right? But it is part of the education process to kind of get the umbrella effect for everybody. So, But let me ask you about the 12 principles of animation, because I've been teaching it, right? And so I'm going to ask you some crazy questions, like what is the one principle that is more important than the rest, if that even exists?
Oh my! Now I have to pull out my little papers here to find out, because I've internalized the principles, and so I got to look at the breakdown here.
Yeah,
I don't know if any one is more important than the other, really. But one that comes up quite a bit, there are two actually. One is appeal, and the other is straight ahead action, or pose to pose. And let me start with that second one first. Generally, I animate pose to pose because it's easier for me. Straight ahead, as the name implies, this means that you're going from, you're actually drawings numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Whereas from pose to pose, you might draw 1 and then 5. and then 15, and then 27,
Right.
because what you're doing with that is you are doing the highlights, the main points of the action. And so I find it's much easier working that way, so that you always know exactly where you're going, to just lay out all of the high points of the action and or the acting, and then fill in the rest. Appeal is that elusive thing.
Yeah. What in the world is that?
Again, yeah, appeal is actually it's relating to the audience. Now, a lot of newcomers confuse appeal with cuteness.
Okay, that's the pitfall there. Okay,
Mm.
it becomes subjective then.
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't matter if the character is, supposed to be a sweetheart or a villain. They still have to be appealing to an audience,
And
so that
explain
it has to be something that people will want to watch.
Hmm.
And it's something that, as I said, that they can relate to on an emotional level, on a human level.
Hmm.
So that's I think that's the best way I can describe appeal is whatever is going to connect with your audience.
Hmm. That's a tough one,
And,
man. That's a
yeah,
tough
it
one.
is. I mean, it's I find that a lot of people starting out, they love drawing ugly characters. Okay, they love drawing things that they think are just funny looking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or outright, outrageous or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily appealing. But it's something that appeals to the person who's drawing it, who created it.
Right.
But it isn't necessarily going to be appealing to other people. And this is why, in thinking about being an animator in general, to not fall into what I used to call the 12 field box, the thing where you're so focused on what you're doing, on what's right in front of you on the drawing board, that everything else disappears, and you're no longer thinking about relating to other people. You're just having a good time drawing what you're drawing, and this is so much fun, this is so great, but you have forgotten your aim when you do that.
Now, is appeal? Well, this is interesting. I want to talk about appeal because that one is the toughest one to teach. Is that related? Is that related more? Are you saying that it's related more to communication or to acting, or is it a bit of both?
It's both, because that's how you are communicating through your acting.
Right.
Yeah. So that's.
I always like to think that there's a 13th principle called acting that they never put in. Because acting is so important. I feel like if you know that part of it, then everything else kind of falls into place. The timing, the staging, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that students sometimes forget that this is what character animation is about. It's not just drawing. It's drawing with a purpose. It's drawing to communicate. It's drawing to get the audience to believe that what you're drawing is actually alive. And in order to do that, you have to put the life into it. You have to imagine that life. You have to be that life. And then you surround that life with lines.
Yeah. That's a wonderful way of putting it. Wonderful way of putting it. You surround that life with lines. Good way of good. I'm going to steal that from you, and
you go right ahead.
Yeah, use that next week. It's interesting because teaching that is really difficult. We can teach the mechanics of it, right? Squash and stretch, anticipation, but teaching that one is really tough because it's natural that when you're starting out, you're kind of you don't you try to approach all your problems through drawing instead of through acting. So you think you could draw your way out of it instead of just like saying, okay, let me just stop and actually act this out with my body and see what happens.
Right, right. That's exactly it. And along with that, one thing that the Disney studio pioneered was drawing rough, so that you're not concentrating on the beauty of the drawing, but you're concentrating on the purpose of the drawing.
Yeah, and that's a very good point to make, because the first thing they want to do is they want to draw every drawing like a clean drawing.
Yeah, yeah. And what's so ironic about that? That's how they used to do things a century ago.
Yeah, that's right.
When animation first started to become a commercial thing, they wanted, this clean drawings, right away, and they wanted you to do them really fast.
Oswald drawings and some of that stuff, they're just like, what was it? The not Oswald, but the Felix the Cat stuff, the Otto Mesmer.
Yeah. Right.
It's like
Yeah. See, the thing with Otto Mesmer himself is that he could do that. He could draw. I'm assuming that he drew clean, because he had turn out one of these things every week or a couple of weeks. And so he had the ability to draw clean and put that appeal into the animation.
Yeah.
But I don't know. They're better off if they draw rough, so that they're not concentrating on making a gorgeous, a beautiful piece of artwork that that all of their friends will love them for. There's what I find too with the students is that they're very hung up on style.
Yeah, exactly.
And what they think is going to look nice, what they think is going to look cool, what they think is going to be, is the funniest looking thing. And that's not what it's about. Style is simply the way you draw. You really shouldn't be thinking at this stage of the game about latching on to a particular look. No matter how much you may like it. I mean, the look is only a vehicle for the story that you want to tell.
And now let me get to this education part real quick. Being that,
Sure.
When we want to become animators, what are the things that we need to know? Like, okay, we got the 12 principles down. Okay, but what else?
Yeah.
What else is going on? What else do I have to study?
Very, very good question. I would say that, learn to draw as well as you possibly can. Go back to figure drawing, go back to academic drawing. Don't just do the cartooning, because you learn from both. One hand washes the other. And what you learn in academic drawing and figure drawing and perspective and so on will keep you from struggling with your animation. Because I've seen that happen quite a bit too. People struggle so much with the drawing. In fact, that's one of the reasons why CGI became popular. Was that
I'm not the draw anymore.
But not anymore. Yeah. Yeah. Someone told me just this past week that something that I didn't realize, that it seemed like CGI was starting to lose its appeal with an audience, and I thought, really?
That took long.
I think it just the novelty wore off. Yeah.
Yeah, there's only so many times that you can see the 3-point landing, from a superhero. It's just
Yeah, but
No,
yeah, and that's what I would say as far as what how to learn this stuff is to not only look at academic drawing, but also watch performances. Watch, you go see movies and plays, and go see ballet, go see modern dance.
no.
Just go see anything that will stimulate you. Anything that will inspire you. Anything that will add to your to the number of arrows, the number of strings in your bow, or the number of arrows in the quiver.
Well, I went to the School of Visual Arts, and in School of Visual Arts, we had two paths of animation. The first one was we go through film, and the other one we go through, I think it was like media or something, or illustration.
Uh-huh.
I took the film path, which is the one that they said you need to know this, and boy, it was there. It was wonderful to know that animation is part of film. It's not, you need to know the story of film, the language of film.
Yeah.
And that means watching movies that were made pre 2010.
Yes, because you have to see what created the dialogue of movies. What created the vocabulary. Sorry, the vocabulary of motion pictures.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you have to go all the way back, and you have to watch development. Watch the growth.
I remember watching Fritz Lang's Faust, and literally seeing that and going, well, that's Night on, Bald Mountain. That's where the Disney guys are getting this stuff from, right? I mean,
Yeah, you're exactly right. That's exactly what they did. They had regular screenings of movies from around the world, and I don't think too many people are doing that now.
no,
But it's
that's something that we have. That's something that we have to put into effect also in our school. Is this kind of film education to everybody, not just to the animators, but also to the illustrators, also because they need to know how to set up a shot.
Yeah.
How to tell a story. So that's something that we have to do ourselves here. Hopefully, one day it's the process.
Yeah, well, I mean, the old filmmakers learned from painters,
Okay.
and and vice versa. So yeah,
So
again,
So Dan, we didn't get a we're running, on the clock here. We didn't get a chance to. I want to when we do this again. I like to kind of go back and talk more about your personal experiences and things like that. But now you're working on what? Bring us into. Well, before that, some of the things you worked on with Disney, and then what are you working on currently?
oh my, well, at the Disney, the first thing I worked on was The Fox and the Hound, and after that came The Little Mermaid, and say briefly, I was on Beauty and the Beast. Let's see. But I've worked on quite a bit of television as well, including Scooby Doo, and we did a lot of Tom and Jerry features for direct to video. Oh my goodness! I've worked for places like Filmation. Oh my goodness! I've been in so many studios. I think a lot of them have disappeared since then.
Yeah.
But
And you're working. The last I heard you told me was you were working on Space Jam 2.
right. I've been at Warner Brothers now for the last decade,
Wow.
and right now I'm on Space Jam 2, and so I'm animating on that now.
Now, how are you animating on that? Is this like paper, or is it like what is digital? Ah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep. That's working on old Bessie back here. That's exactly what I'm doing. Is working on paper the traditional way. Yep.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So, any closing words to a young person that is getting into this crazy, bizarre industry?
Okay, I think two things. Have fun acting. Have fun, because it's pretending. So have fun pretending to be these wonderful characters, and learn as much about cartooning and drawing as you possibly can. Take the time to look back at the last couple of centuries of cartooning and see what that can offer you, because since animation depends a great deal on exaggeration,
Mm,
you have all of this wonderful material to study,
mm.
so that you can pick that up and use it in what you're doing.
Wonderful, wonderful. And like I said before at the beginning, I just want to thank you again for always guiding me. You were the Eric Larson when we were starting out. I remember going at Disney and you were there. You and Daniel Malagrero, God bless them, and Luis Scarborough, who always took the time to help the young kids.
Mm.
I don't know how you lived through looking at our bad drawings, but somehow you made it.
Well, thanks again for this opportunity, because I love,
Thank you.
I love talking with kids, and I love I just really enjoy being able to pass along what I've learned.
Well, I think we will hopefully have you soon here well, I'm in Macerata right now, but in Florence, and so that you can talk to our class directly, which would be a lovely honor on our part to have
Oh,
you.
that'd be fun. That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Plus, you'll come back like 90 pounds heavier from all the good food. That's the price you got to pay.
I think I got too much right here to
Yeah,
begin
well,
with.
there's no room to spare. Thank you, Dan. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and just thank you for your time and helping us.
Oh, man. You're very welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.